sitting across from me today is dangerous. Dan Borowski. Dan, this is the first time that I have seen you or been in your presence for over 25 years.
It reminds me of like a dry wine, but a little more syrupy.
Boom.
So my face was like worse than it looks now, dude. Try to imagine this. Worse than it looks now.
I can't imagine.
I know.
It's impossible.
It was a really hard time. I remember like I'd broken up with the girl that I was with at the time because of my problems.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, I was just...
You shit the bed too much.
I was just everywhere.
You were looking for happiness, and you found that through psychedelics, and you actually wrote a book about it called SHROOMED. Were you scared?
I was terrified. My first trip was terrible.
So, if psilocybin never came into Dan's life, where would Dan be today?
Probably single. I'm very ashamed of the person I was in life. Like, I was not me. I was not a good person. I have a lot of regret over how that whole thing went. You know, we ended up getting married, and it was on our honeymoon where it all hit me. I'm like, what the fudge have I done?
Oh my God, this is getting all scratched up. What a shame.
My watch?
What a shame. No, I don't think so. Welcome to the Barbells and Bourbon podcast. I am your big, bald, bearded, barbell lifting, bourbon drinking son of a bitch, Sean. And sitting across from me today is dangerous Dan Borowski. Welcome, dude. Welcome to our home.
It's been a minute, brother.
It has been more than a minute. It has been 84 years, as Titanic Lady would say. We'll get into why I made that reference. But how long did it take you to get here, man?
I traveled a massive amount of 10 minutes, Sean, to get here.
Did you take an Uber?
I would appreciate if you could maybe throw me some gas money for that.
Yeah.
In my wife's Prius.
Just invoice me.
Okay.
That way I can write it off. But I appreciate your diligence in getting here, man.
Happy to be here.
And after that very long journey, you've got to be thirsty.
I am parched.
So I have a wall of lukewarm, non-clear beverages if you would like to quench your thirst. Does anything stand out? Do you drink bourbon?
I do not. I don't think I've ever had a glass of bourbon in my life, to be honest with you.
Oh my, so you're going to pop your bourbon cherry. All right, does anything stand out?
What would you recommend, my friend, to an amateur, an absolute first-timer, novice?
Oh, I'm so happy you asked. So being that this is going to be somewhat of a reminiscent episode for us, and we'll get into why, I'll pick a reminiscent bottle.
All right.
So if you could grab the Woodford Reserve Double Oaked right there. Perfect.
There you go.
So the reason I say this is a reminiscent bottle is because this is the bottle of bourbon that got me into bourbon. I used to travel.
How this all started.
Yeah, so I used to travel a decent amount with a colleague in a previous role that I had. And every work trip we would go on, we'd eat dinner in the evenings, and oftentimes he would sip on some bourbon neat meaning no ice.
Okay.
And, you know, being that I wanted to be the tough guy and act like I was cultured as well, I would oftentimes, partake. And I did not enjoy it at first, but, I didn't want to be that guy. And I'm like, you know what, I want to acquire a taste for this, because I had never really drank. I didn't like beer. Yeah. Probably the only man on the planet that doesn't like beer. Yeah. Never acquired a taste for beer. I actually tried to acquire a taste for beer.
I can't stand beer.
Didn't work. Didn't care for wine. I'm like, you know what? I need a vice. So I'm gonna learn to like this stuff. So the Double Oaked is what he always chose at dinner. And the bourbon I started with, and now the collection has grown to probably 60 bottles.
All right.
And I always recommend this to someone if they're shopping around for something for a friend or family member, because it's freaking amazing and it's readily available and it's only $65.
Nice. Where's this from? Kentucky?
Kentucky. Yep. Yeah, Woodford Reserve is a really good distillery. Cheers, brother. Thanks for coming. Hey, first, tell me what you smell here. I know what I smell.
It reminds me of like a dry wine, but
Okay.
a little more syrupy.
Boom. You nailed it. So the syrupy taste. When I smell and taste this, I taste French toast. And you're probably like,
I'm not tasting the French
you're a
toast.
psycho if
Yeah.
you taste French toast. But as you
smooth.
acquire a taste for bourbon, you start to be able to pick out certain tasting notes. And the fact that this is double oaked means it was aged for a certain amount of time in a new oak barrel and then transferred to a charred oak barrel. So
Okay.
it takes on taste and,
Qualities
from each barrel. And this is darker than most bourbons. It's thicker. It's a little viscous.
Yeah.
The mouth feel is very, like, it coats your mouth.
Yep.
There's a lot of bourbons here and in general that have a very thin mouth feel. And it's just kind of like, there's not much substance to it. But yeah, this is one of my favorites. And it's funny that you pointed out the syrupy taste.
Nice.
So now you're a professional.
Where does bourbon come from? Like, is it a grain or 'cause it's not grapes like wine? So hops or like beer?
So
or?
for bourbon to be considered, bourbon, it has to contain more than 50% corn, or at least 50% corn. Has to be aged in new oak barrel. Has to be aged for at least 2 years, and it has to be distilled in the U.S. So those are the requirements for what a bourbon is, or what it has to be.
I never knew that.
Yeah. So you'll see whiskeys. So bourbon is whiskey,
Okay.
but bourbon is a bourbon because of those four things that I
process,
just
yeah.
mentioned. Right. So
Fascinating.
yeah, I think it is. Obviously,
Yeah. Yeah.
it interests me.
It's part of your brand.
Yeah. So yeah, I mentioned this is going to be reminiscent.
Yes.
In many ways. So Dan, this is the first time that I have seen you or been in your presence for over 25 years,
Yes, sir.
which is insane.
Yeah.
We graduated high
Last
school.
time I saw you, you were probably my size. And you and my friends Charlie and Joe used to lift at the gym
Yeah.
on 286. What's that?
It was the Holiday Health and Racket
Yeah.
Club.
Yep. I remember going there a couple times and lifting with you guys.
Yeah.
And then you turned into this.
A lot of things have changed.
20
man.
years, yeah.
A lot of things have changed. So yeah, we graduated in 97 and we were good friends.
Yeah.
In high school. We hung out. We spent a lot of time together in class. We were in the same homeroom together because our last names are close. I
remember our lunch periods together.
Yeah, I considered you a good friend. And it's just like, people are going to be watching this being like, well, if you were such good friends, why is this the first time you've seen each other in 25 years? Yeah. Great question. But life takes us in different directions,
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that we're still not friends because we haven't seen each other, but we each took a different path, and hey, we're back.
There we are.
We've met at an intersection again. It just took a really long time. So, so dude, yeah, it's really cool to see you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It has been so long. You haven't changed a bit.
Yeah.
I have, but yeah, you're the same Dan I remember. So I want to catch up with you. I want to know, what's happened in 25 years. And then I also want you to tell your story, because I know there's a lot about you that I don't know, from childhood to, adult life. And, I'm very interested in what's been going on. So
Awesome.
if you wouldn't mind, let's start kind of from the beginning. Not like the day you were
December
born.
12th, 1978. It was
I
a
remember
cold
it.
winter day. Yeah.
Like it was yesterday.
Yeah, I was born in Maryland on a naval base. My dad was in the Navy. Then we moved back up here. I think we lived in Arnold, was our first home. But as far as childhood goes, I had two very loving parents. I have an older sister, a younger brother, who to this day are two of my best friends. We didn't have much when I was young. My dad got out of the Navy, and well, he was in the reserves actually for 34 years. But when he got out of active duty, I know we were looking for work when I was real young. But my parents always had food on the table, roof over our head, piece of crap car to take us around. But yeah, we were always well taken care of. So I can't complain about my childhood. It's been interesting since I've been back. I've been living in Seattle for the last 10 years, recently moved back. I left a bunch of my old childhood journals at my dad's house that I've been kind of rereading.
Okay.
So it's been really interesting to look back at my childhood from the perspective of where I am now.
When did you start journaling? At like what age? How far back did it?
Fifth grade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yep.
So you had kind of like a diary.
Yeah. Yep.
What do you think made
Journal,
you start?
Sean, we called it journal.
You didn't have like a lock on
A little
it.
unicorn on it. Yeah.
What? I mean, I've never really journaled as a child. What do you think made you start doing that at that young age?
Honestly, I think it was an outlet. I was very introverted as a child. Like I never had trouble interacting with people. Like I always had friends and stuff, but I never felt like I fit in through my whole childhood, through high school, through most of my life, to be honest with you. I was a big Trekkie when I was a kid, and I loved the civilization, like where humanity's evolved past yeah, dude, live long and prosper. But I fell in love with that because I never found any purpose. Nothing resonated with me in society, like, get a big house, drive a nice car. Like I never had any desire in any of that. I remember even like in high school, sitting in the pep rally auditoriums and being like, "What the hell's wrong with these people?" Like going crazy and over watching other people play sports. And it always, looking back in these journals, I was very alone emotionally.
Okay.
Middle child, that syndrome.
Okay.
But yeah, I think I really started taking to my journals just as a way to vent and express myself.
Had you ever tried talking to anybody about the things that you would journal about, or was that just something between you and yourself?
Yeah, it was a lot of private stuff. Yeah, I never really,
Never really opened up to your parents or to your siblings?
No, I was, my dad's a very stoic man. Like, he's a man's man. I mean, my dad is my hero still to this day. Gets me emotional even saying that. Like my
awesome,
dad
man.
is
That's awesome.
my hero. And as a child, that was my role model. So I think I internalized a lot of that stuff. Just watching even how my parents interacted. There's a lot of emotional
Barriers.
Yeah. So I think I just followed in that kind of footsteps.
So the environment that you grew up in became who you were in many ways. Little affection, either physical or verbal affection. And
my parents were affectionate, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But I just followed in that, I don't know, I just was a very individual kind of person.
Did you think that opening up or being emotional or vulnerable was a sign of weakness, maybe?
No, it never felt wrong to me. It never felt like I was hiding something. Like I just never fit. So I think that's what led to my journaling.
Okay. So you started journaling at a young age. What were your high school years like? What do you remember about that, as far as you said you felt like you never fit in?
Yeah.
I think that's probably why we became friends.
Yeah, we were that group of
Because
misfits.
I didn't fit in to any cliques.
Yeah.
I wasn't in the jock clique. I
Yep.
wasn't in the athlete clique. I wasn't in the, the popular kid clique. I wasn't in the smart kid clique. I just kind of fell in the middle of a lot of different things. And I think that's what drew us together. Now that I'm, you don't think about this at the time. Like, how did you become friends? Now that I'm thinking back on it, that's probably why we were drawn together, because we were sort of living that same middle ground life of like, where do we belong?
Yeah, that's a good observation.
Right. Yep. So, I mean, and, I'm glad I found you, because, we did have a lot in common. So what else do you remember from high school as far as Did you get good grades? Did you study
I
hard? Did you do your homework? Like, were you like a diligent?
hated school. Hated school so much. I hated the structure of it, the systems, the rules, the way that we were taught. Like none of it clicked for me. And I was such a nerd. I loved astronomy, biology, all these things. In my journals, 5th grade, I was planting trees in different kinds of soil and like recording which one grew and how they grew. Like I had such a love of the world around me, but none of that got fostered in our public schools. And my wife's a high school math teacher, so not trash talking teachers, but just the system for someone like me and for many other kids, it doesn't resonate, doesn't click.
So you're a free spirit. I
Try to
mean,
be.
that's kind of how I see you. You know, and I don't know if you still feel the same way to this day, but you didn't like rules. You kind of just bobbed and weaved through life and did what you were told, and you didn't have to enjoy it, but you know,
Yeah.
none of us have to enjoy it. So you were sort of just like, you kind of floated through and, you know, whatever. But so you got through high school. Obviously you got good enough grades to graduate. So what did you do after that? Were you, you know, when you graduated, were you like, I have to find a job now? Were your parents like, Dan, you're graduated, time to, you know, put your feet to the ground and find something useful to do with your life? How did that all kind of play out?
So early on in high school, well, most of my life, I planned on joining the military. And so this led, there's like, I don't know, maybe 4 major life-changing events that I've had since high school and stuff. But so I'd planned on joining the military. That was my plan. That was going to be my Starfleet. You know, that was going to take me away from normal life, let me see the world. I wanted to be a soldier. I wanted, you know, I was patriotic at the time. My dad was a Navy vet. My grandpap was a Navy vet. So that was my plan. I enlisted halfway through our senior year. I enlisted in the military. Towards the end of high school, I started getting sick. Started having a lot of health problems. Started having diarrhea all the time. I lost a lot of weight. I think it's like $120 by the time we graduated. Yeah.
I don't even remember that.
Yeah. Towards the end of the year,
Although
I started losing a lot of weight.
I was about $120 too. Anyways.
Yeah. So I was $130 regularly, and I went down to $120. But so right before basic, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and I had to be on prescription meds. And the military's like, sorry, you know, they medically discharged me, and that just sent me a curveball in life.
Wow.
Which led, and we'll get into this, but led me on a journey of health through the last 25 years. But yeah, so that was like a big hurdle in life. It kind of set me reeling. I didn't have a plan B. Like I was going to be a military brat. I wanted to be an Army Ranger. And right after graduation, where I got the news I wasn't going to go to the military, I didn't have any direction. I had no desire to go to college. Like none. I did not want 4 more years of school of stuff I didn't want to learn.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you didn't like high school.
Yeah.
You didn't like the structure of it. You're certainly not going to enjoy
I didn't
college.
want to pay for stuff I didn't need to learn. Nothing was really interesting me. And this is, you remember, like back late 90s, we didn't have the internet. Like I didn't know this world that was available to us that you can just Google, like, I'm interested in this. What's my options? So I started working odds and ends job. I was working on an assembly line, packaging peanuts for 10 hours a day in these little containers, like right after high school. It was the most mind-numbing job I've ever worked in my life. And at the time, my mother and I were butting heads a lot. So it was pretty much like, you know, I needed to get out of the house.
Butting heads. Do you mind if I ask why you were butting heads?
We were probably too much alike.
Okay.
Very stubborn people. She wanted me to take the next step in life. I didn't know what that step was. I was still ill with my Crohn's disease. So I didn't like have any direction. And as a parent, she was not happy about that, which is understandable. So I worked on a farm all through high school. And then after high school, I kept working with that guy. And we were doing like landscaping, odds and ends job. I was maybe making like $200 a week. I mean, just no money at all, just enough to put gas in the tank. Mm-hmm. And a neighbor bought this farm across this dentist bought a farm across the street from us where when I was a kid, like 14, 15, I used to go work for the owner. And he kind of got in touch with me and was like, hey, if you're willing to take care of this place, because we're trying to figure out if we're going to develop or whatever, you can live here. Just take care of the place, cut the fields, do all the maintenance and stuff. So I was 18 years old. I moved out a quarter mile from my parents' house. But
Okay.
I was out.
I bet your mom was thrilled.
Yeah, it's just ecstatic. So this is where my life changed. This is where I had my first major chapter, was battling my Crohn's disease. So I was going to the doctors at the time. They're putting me on all these prescription meds. I started working for this carpenter, and I remember we'd eat lunch, and I'd have 8 pills that I had to take. I was 18, 19 years old. I'm taking all these pills at lunch, and the guys would all be like, "What? What's this kid eating?"
Yeah.
And they put me on high doses of anti-inflammatories like prednisone, which is so bad for you. So my face was worse than it looks now, dude. Try to imagine this. Worse than it looks now.
I can't imagine.
I know.
It's impossible.
Don't have a face for TV. So I having all these side effects from the meds. Every time they try to back me off the steroids, my symptoms would flare back up. Mm-hmm. So I'd go back to the doctor. So like, oh, we're going to try this new drug. They jack me back up on the prednisone.
Throwing shit at you, hoping something works.
And at one point, my mom was with me at the doctor's, and she said, is there anything that Danny shouldn't be eating? Anything I can cook for him? Anything? And the doctor says, no, that doesn't matter. We'll get this out in with these prescription drugs. He's going to be on it for life. There's no cure, So that kind of blew my mind. But I think that was my first inkling, because I'd already noticed it. If I drink a milkshake, my stomach hurts worse than if I eat a steak. I noticed that there are certain things that were setting me off.
Hold on.
Yeah. Gastrointestinal specialist, digestive doctor said that what you're digesting doesn't affect at all.
That is disturbing on so many levels.
Yeah. And again, this is late 90s. Knowledge isn't what it is now. These guys were educated by the pharmaceutical funded.
They didn't have the.
I'm not going to rant, buddy.
They didn't have the internet to Google what should I avoid eating when I have Crohn's disease.
Yeah.
That's scary, dude. So they were trying to band-aid the problem with prescription medications at 18, 19 years old.
And it got to the point, so like I said, my face was just all swelled up, acne from the prednisone. And another doctor gave me, I think it was called Accutane for my face, which effed up my hormone level. So I'm probably 19 at this time. I'd start crying in the middle of the day. Oh my gosh. I couldn't perform because my hormones were so out of whack. And this is a 19-year-old boy having these problems.
The peak of your testosterone levels. Yeah.
Yeah. So my energy was gone. I'm just emotional all the time. And, they're always their answer was, we'll take this drug to combat this drug, to take this drug. So I go back to the doctors, off the prednisone again, symptoms are flaring up, can hardly get out of bed to work, can hardly sleep at night. And he's like, well, we're going to try this one new drug. I think it's called Pentasa or something. And he's like, and if this doesn't work, we're going to cut out part of your intestines.
If this doesn't work, we're going to have to kill you.
Yeah, you're done.
So they had to cut out your intestines.
This is what they wanted to do. 19 years old, I was going to have a colostomy bag. I'm like, my life's over. I mean, I'm so depressed at this point.
Oh my gosh.
But as life has a way of doing, it throws me a life preserver thing, whatever, that round thing. Is this stuff getting to me already?
That lifesaver, the fruity taste.
I had a cousin, a third cousin, I think. Her name was Angel, who also had Crohn's disease. And she had found this book with this, which would be called woo-woo science back then, where I think he was a chiropractor, had formulated this process for people with IBS, and it talked about elimination diets, fasting, supplements, avoiding things. And she brought this book over to my house. We had a big conversation about it. And so I stuck to this book. This is the first time I took accountability for my health in my life. So I did all these things. What little money I had, I spent on aloe vera juice, the certain supplements, like milk thistle and vitamins and omegas. Followed it to the T. So I had 12 weeks before this next appointment. By the time I went back to the doctors, I was off. I took myself, which I never recommend doing. Just to be clear, you shouldn't take yourself off prescription
we
meds.
are not doctors.
I am not a doctor, even though they're idiots. I took myself off of all my meds. I had gained like 5 pounds. My energy was back. My face was clearing up. I felt great. I had normal poo in the toilet. Like,
you were handsome again.
I wouldn't go
Not
that
quite.
far, brother,
Not quite.
but we're not there yet. That comes later. But yeah, so I was feeling a lot better.
Yeah.
I go back to the doctors. I take this book with me. I'm so excited because I'm going to tell this doctor about this, and he's going to be able to help all these people with this knowledge. So I go in. I mean, I remember sitting in the waiting room, like shaking. I'm so happy. I can't wait to see this doctor again. He's going to be so happy that I'm healed. I go in there. I tell the doctor what I did. He reams me out.
Oh my God.
Reams me out, saying that it's just in remission. There's no cure. And I'm like, well, I'm not saying it's still not there, but I'm controlling it. I'm like, I'm off all my meds. Like, look, I got these little muscles. And I was all excited. And yeah, he just reamed me out. And that is the last time in my life I've been to a doctor other than for stitches and broken and poison ivy and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like boiling inside right now because I sense your frustration. And being that you're a free spirit and you don't like abiding by rules, the fact that you were taking all these prescription medications and doing what the doctor told you is a big deal for someone like you, because you don't want to be told what to do and follow orders, whatever. So you must have been in a really bad place to consider experimenting with this book that you knew nothing about. So you must have been really struggling.
Yeah. It was a really hard. I remember like I'd broken up with the girl that I was with at the time because of my problems.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, I was just.
You shit the bed too much.
I was just everywhere, man. I would get up and have to run to the bathroom.
I don't mean to joke about it.
No. I never did it in bed. But
Okay. Well,
it's been some close calls. But yeah, like I couldn't go on vacations because I'd have to plan out where the closest bathroom was.
so those commercials that we see on TV with, everything revolves around where the bathroom is at. That was you.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was me.
So you found the magical book. You found your cure. You take it to the doctor, excited to share the news. The doctor should be excited that his patient or her patient is healthier.
Yep.
They're pissed off.
Yep.
Because guess what?
They're not going to make any more money.
Not going to make any more money off all the meds that they're pumping into your body. Yeah. I don't want to go down that road.
I know, yeah.
But we could, but I don't want to take that path. But okay. You say F the doctor. Yep. No, you say fuck the doctor.
Yep.
You start doing things your way. How does your life change?
Oh, it changes. So this inadvertently leads to my second big moment that changed my life forever. I'm getting healthy again, right? I got my energy back. I'm lifting weights again. I started going to Conchagaro Martial Arts on 286, but he wasn't on 286. This is a long time ago, for jiu-jitsu. And I'm taking these lessons from him. I love grappling. This is before Hoist Gracie. This is back in the day. And I'm there one night and he goes, "Hey, Dan, do you want to hit these boxing mitts?" I said, yeah, let's try that. So he shows me how to throw some punches, and I just fell in love instantly with hitting these boxing slip. Like I just loved it. It's something clicked. I'm like, oh my God, I fell in love with this. And he's like, for someone your size, you hit pretty good. He's like, you got a good IQ for this. He's like, why don't we work on this a little bit?
You're stronger than you look.
Yeah, for 125 pounds soaking wet. So probably 3 weeks of starting this boxing, Jeff, who was kind of connected with the local fight game at the time, gets a call from a promoter, and he's like, "Hey, do you have anyone this size that could do this kickboxing match this Friday, like 1 week from today?" So Jeff calls me up. He's like, "Dan, you're not ready. Do you want to do this?" He's like, "It's 3 rounds, 3 2-minute rounds." I'm like, F yeah. I'm like, let's do this. You're 19. You're indestructible. Especially the way I was feeling now, like off all my meds.
Yeah. You're reborn.
I take this fight on it might have been a week and a half notice. Now, I'm not doing any cardio at the time. The day of the fight, it's on a Friday, 80 some degrees. I worked laboring, carrying block all day for this foundation I was building with this contractor I worked for, 80 degrees. End of the day, I go to this hotel in Butler where the fight's going to be. Weigh in. Then my grandma made me a bowl of spaghetti because that's what you do. You
Carb
eat carbs.
up.
Even though I don't eat spaghetti because of my Crohn's disease, I'm like, this is what fighters do. So, I'm out in my truck eating my bowl of spaghetti. I go in. I don't have like any robes or fight gear.
You have like an intro song or anything?
Yeah, I'm wearing sweatpants and a wife beater. So I get up.
Got redneck Dan.
Yeah, seriously, hillbilly out of this corner. My family's there. My mom's there. My dad, my grandpa, a couple friends from high school were there. My cousins, my brother. I don't think my sister was there, but anyway. So it's a pretty big deal. It's really nice. They got a nice ring set up, and I'm like kind of overwhelmed. I'm like, okay, this is weird. So I get up in the ring, like walk in there, like looking around. They introduce my opponent, who's from the boxing club that's putting on this show. Comes out with like a train of guys.
Oh no.
Robe, hood up, gets in the rings, doing all these kicks, and I'm like, oh shit.
It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. So my dad told me that at that time,
I think I gotta go.
my mom saw this guy doing this, and she's like, "Stop the fight!" Like she was like all scared because this guy looked like a pro, and I'm like,
you still got like tomato sauce.
Yeah, from the spaghetti. Got some spaghetti stains on my shirt. It's like, all right,
this guy's legit.
So bell rings. Guy comes running across the ring. I'm so tense. I throw this crazy haymaker. He slips under, takes me in the gut. That's how the fight starts. I never got knocked down. I made it through the first round. I don't think I took a breath the entire round. I go back to my corner, and I'm just like, what the hell just happened? Like,
so did you have a trainer in the corner with you?
Jeff ended up being able to come. Like at the last minute, he showed up, and so it was just like this thrown together ordeal. So Jeff's like sees my face, and he's like, "Dan, he's just as tired as you are." He's like sitting me down,
Sure
and I'm like,
is.
my hands won't move. Like I have never in my life been that tired. Like it was just 2 minutes of total.
You
tense.
were so tense. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I don't think I breathed for like 2 minutes. So I'm sitting there in the corner, and like there was another guy that was friends with Jeff that was going to work my corner if Jeff didn't show up, but Jeff got there. So these guys are like yelling, like, do this, throw this jab, watch out for this, do this. And I'm just sitting there like, I don't hear anything they're
You're
saying.
like, don't die.
I am terrified to go back out and fight another round.
So I've never been in a boxing ring with anyone. How bad does it hurt to get pounded on like that?
I still remember an uppercut that kid hit me with, where my vision flashed white. And I like grabbed onto him so I could clear my head.
That's crazy.
This is what, almost 20 some years ago. I still remember that. My jaw hurt so bad the next day.
Wow.
But yeah, it's terrifying. Yeah.
Okay.
Because the worst thing is my family's there. My friends are there. They're all cheering me on. And I just want to crawl in a hole and die. Like it was the worst. It was one of the worst experiences of my life at that moment.
Okay. So you were how old? 19?
19, yeah.
Okay. Up until that point, had you ever been that scared about anything in your life? Or is that like
No.
Like the first time that fear actually met Dan Borowski?
Yeah, to that level, absolutely.
That's crazy. Okay.
So
Round 2.
yeah.
Bing, bing.
So I wanted out of that ring.
Yeah.
I did not want to go back out and fight. And I remember, like they stood me up, and I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, I can quit. Like I can quit. Like I can say that's enough. I'm done. He wins.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's one of those moments that just freezes in time. Like in that Saved by the Bell show, remember they'd freeze the world?
Yeah.
And like I'm just like looking around and taking this all in. And I'm like, I'm going to be humiliated in front of my family. I'm like, but I'll survive. Like I'm not going to get hit in the head anymore. And then I said, I just envisioned how I'd have to live with that for the rest of my life. I'm like, okay, the other option is you man the fuck up and you get out there and fight. And it doesn't matter if you win, it doesn't matter if you lose, but you're going to fight
least you tried.
until you have nothing left. And that's what I did. And I lost the decision, but I made it the next 2 rounds. At the last round, the other guy was just as tired as me. And I remember, like, as clear as day, I hit him with a real good right hook, and he stumbled back. And I remember hearing my grandpap saying, "Hit him again, Dan." And I couldn't.
Yeah.
And since he wasn't coming at me, like, we just kind of stood there and looked at each other. We were both just dead on our feet. But yeah, I made it. And Sean, that moment has given me strength in my life more times than I can count. When I've been buried with projects or on the side of a cliff, like thinking I'm going to die, I've been like, "You've been here before. Just breathe and get the fucking work." And then, like, it's given me, if I wouldn't have had that moment, there's so many more times in my life where I might have failed without knowing that you have another gear.
That's
a
crazy.
Gear that you don't even know exists unless you're pushed to that limit. I don't remember getting out of that ring. I vaguely remember being in a cold shower back in, like, our hotel room that was our locker room. I think I had, like, a heat stroke. I puked a whole bunch because I worked the whole day like an idiot.
But you had the spaghetti.
The spaghetti came back. It was better the first time, Graham's spaghetti.
Anyways.
But yeah,
Okay.
it's a pivotal moment.
So my previous episode with Kevin, he talks about a lot of life-altering moments.
Yeah.
You know, roads and paths that lead into one intersection that you have no idea is going to happen. Yeah. And if that doesn't happen, you know, your life takes a completely different route. But you were pushed to the point of fight or flight, literally.
Yep.
And you had two choices to make. One, take the easy road. It hurts too much. This is hard. I want to leave. I want to go home. Or this is your time to prove yourself. Because up until that point, you didn't really know where you fit in life. Okay? You weren't trying to be one thing or another. You were kind of just floating through trying to find your place. And I think in that moment, you found your place. You were stronger than you thought. You'd been through all these medical problems, doing what you were told by the doctors. You took ownership of that. And now you took ownership of what's Dan going to do in this god-awful, scariest situation of 19 years. And, you know, you're like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm not a quitter. So now you have this strength that you didn't know you had. You got through the fight. You survived. Was it easy? No. Anything worth achieving shouldn't be easy.
Amen.
Right? And that's okay. Tell me how that fight led to the next pivotal moment in your life.
So after that, early 20s, life was going good.
You're still in the Pittsburgh area, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Bought my first house in Arnold for $20,000. Yeah. Big spender. Good times down there in Arnold. Lower Arnold, LA.
Yeah.
Wrong side of the tracks. I started buying investment properties. My plan was to get out of this system that I don't want to be part of. I have to beat the system. This is my mentality. So I'm like, I'm going to get all these streams of passive income. And I'm just going to be like corporate America, and I'm going to be a dirtbag, whatever, forever. This is my plan. And I was on my way. I was on my way for a young guy. I was doing really good. And then two bad things happened. Well, one, my mom passed away when I was like 24, 25. She died of pancreatic cancer. And there was a lot of unsaid stuff between her and I. And by the time we realized she was not going to get better, it was kind of too late to sit down and have those talks that needed to happen. And so this comes up later in my life, but I just kind of buried all that. And I kind of went on what I call my rampage, where I just like, what's the purpose to any of this? Like, fuck it, fuck everything.
Because your mom had passed?
That, my anger with not having
Closure,
yeah. And like I said, again, I was kind of depressed. That solitude where I didn't deal with my emotions, didn't confront them, just buried them. And it's not healthy. So it was kind of like some wild years. I was having a lot of fun, like young men do. I met my ex-wife. Her grandfather had also recently passed, who was like a father figure in her life. So you have these two young, one of us is attractive, one of us is me, people who just found each other. Both were looking for something something to latch onto. And we latched on
because you were
each
dealing
other.
with your own little traumas and tragedies. Yeah.
And we wanted something, and we found each other. And she's a great person. No bad words about my ex-wife. We had a lot of fun together. And I think if the relationship would have naturally ran its course, we would have eventually parted before we got real serious. Like, we were two different people, but we had a lot of fun together. The worst thing happened that could happen to someone with my ego. Her mom didn't like me, didn't approve of me.
What's not to like, dude?
Dude, I'm telling you, man. I wasn't a Christian.
Okay.
I didn't have enough money. I didn't drive a nice vehicle. I lived in Lower Arnold. A lot of red flags for it, which, as a parent, I understand. I'm sure when guys start dating your girls, it's going to be.
Yeah. So why did she feel like these were requirements for her daughter's partner? Did they live that life?
Yeah, they tried to. Look, I don't want to badmouth people.
I don't want you to.
Where they were at that moment in their life, it was a very material time for them, I think, for her parents.
Okay.
And that's what they wanted. You know, they drank the Kool-Aid with this is happiness. You're going to need this big house. You need this big family. You need this nice car. And that wasn't me at all. And I think a lot of this possibly was me like wanting this mother figure back in my life that I wanted to please, her mom, and to kind of replace my mom. You know,
that mother was rejecting you.
Yes. Excuse me. And so that triggered my fight response again. So I had to.
Did you land the uppercut?
Oh, God, there's some days, man. We used to go at it. But.
So you stood your ground.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to show her that I was that guy, the perfect guy for her daughter. So I changed. And I started dragging my ex to church. She had no interest in church at the time. I started dragging her to Bible. I'm like, her mom wants to see a Christian couple. That's what she's going to see. I started judging the clothes she would wear. I started like questioning the music. Like, someone who's not me at all became what young Trek Danny would have hated me being.
So your ex's mom, did she try to instill these same values in her daughter?
They, at the time, my ex was living with her grandma. Her mom worked full time and went to school, I believe. She was very busy. Again, I don't want to judge people, but no.
Okay. So it's almost like she got the get out of jail free card. She could just be her partner, Dan, had to fit and check all these boxes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I feel like this, looking back, this is one of the times, 2 or 3 times, I'm very ashamed of the person I was in life. Like, I was not me. I was not a good person. I have a lot of regret over how that whole thing went. You know, we ended up getting married, and it was on our honeymoon where it all hit me. I'm like, what the fudge have I done? Like, they're talking about, you're going to have to buy this house and have this car and
like you didn't recognize
and
yourself.
Have kids. Yeah. And it just all dawned on me. Like, all of a sudden I'm like, holy shit, man, I'm trapped. I'm like, my next, 100 years are laid out. Like, this is my life.
So you've become an actor.
Exactly.
You're trying to play a role, right? Yep. That you could never escape.
Yeah.
Well, thought you could never escape.
Yeah. All my dreams that I had kind of disappeared. And by the time that I'd woken up, I was married. Like, I had made a vow to someone that I'd promised, like, till death do us part and all this stuff. And I'm like a loyal person when it comes to stuff like that. But yeah, I just became miserable. Oh man, I feel so bad. Like,
Yeah, you were resenting.
yeah, I resented her, but I wasn't taking ownership. I was blaming my ex. I was blaming her mother, their family for the
For your
person that I'd
unhappiness.
become. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just felt trapped. Yeah.
How did you break out?
We lasted a whole year before, I remember like taking these long walks at night with my dog in the woods, like just like, what the hell do I do? Like I'm trapped. Yeah. And eventually we ended it. It was,
How did that divorce go? Was it, I'm guessing it wasn't mutual, or was it?
by that point, it was pretty mutual. Like I'm the one that like said the words.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, was she, do you think she was happy?
I think we were in love with an image of each other, but not
The real,
the real person that each of us was. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, she's a great person. I hear that she's married. She has 3 kids. She has what she wanted with the guy she wanted. Like, and that's great. But it just, yeah, it was just such a facade, such a fake thing.
well, I mean, in hindsight, I guess it's good it only lasted a year.
Yeah.
You know, you didn't drag each
Yeah.
other through the
And
trenches.
we didn't have kids, so we were able to split amicably. And
Yeah. All right. So now you're a divorced man. You are able to be yourself again. You don't have to act or be someone that you're not to please anybody else. What do you do next?
so the next chapter is still no ownership of my life. I'm still, so one of the things I left out to impress my ex-wife's mom. In 2007, I refinanced all of my properties for high interest rates so that I could take all this equity out whenever they were like asking you to take loans. And the next year, 2008, we know what happened. So I had years of debt that I had to get out of. Everything, again, was someone else's fault, not my fault, that I was trapped. I was living in a house that I didn't want, that I couldn't get out of because there's no equity in it. So eventually I took 2 years. I'm like, the problem is where I live. I'm like, I need to get out of here. It's these people around me. It's these toxic people. They're bringing me down. I need to get out of here. So I set this 2-year goal. I just bury my head down and I work like 7 days a week, work, do all these repairs on the houses, get rid of them as I can. And at the end of 2 years, I had an opportunity. I was going to leave. And then the people I was working for heard that I was going to leave, and they were opening up an office in Seattle. And I was installing gutters and stuff at the time. They're like, hey, do you want to move out here? We'll give you some money to move out, and you can help us start up that business on the West Coast. I'm like, yeah, that sounds perfect because I'm out of here and I don't have any money for gas. So this could work. So I get rid of everything I own. Everything that I kept fits in the back of a Ford Ranger pickup truck. I've never been happier. Heading west with this beat up, rusty 95 Ford Ranger. I left like a couple of my journals and photo albums at my dad's house, but everything, I have a mountain bike, I have my climbing gear, a couple pairs of clothes, and I'm just like, I'm free. This is it. This is what I wanted.
I can imagine, I've obviously never been in that situation, but I can imagine how that would just feel like the biggest breath of fresh air,
Big
weight off their shoulders. So I'm happy for you for that. Tell me you had a dog in the bed of that truck, just to add to the image that I have right now.
Dixie had just been put down before I left.
Sorry.
She was 14.
So you would have had a dog
I
in the
had
bed of
her
that truck.
collar in the rearview mirror.
So she was with you.
Dixie. Yeah, there's a chapter of my life about that dog.
So you're heading west.
Heading west.
The other side of the
Driving
country.
into the sunset, like all those old country songs. Like, here we go, man. My plan was to live in Seattle for like 2 years, help these guys get their business established, and then maybe head to Alaska, maybe head to Colorado. I didn't know, man. It was great. Every day was new horizons.
And you didn't have to know. That's the
No,
beauty of
that's
it.
what
You
I
weren't
love.
attached to anything.
Yeah.
You could do whatever the fuck you wanted.
Someone once asked me, like, we were having this conversation and we were talking about like one word to describe yourself. And the word I kept coming back to is explore. Like nothing makes me happier than new horizons, new land, new, like not knowing what's around the next bend.
Yeah.
That's like, I could do that for the rest of my life. Just traveling, exploring, having adventures.
Well, that explains why you hated school and structure and everything
Yeah,
else.
so repetitive.
Yep.
But
So you make it to Seattle.
make it to Seattle.
Installing
Don't know
gutters.
a person. It's great. I spent a month in Bolivia with some friends, and that's where I met the lovely Amanda, my wife now. But
Who has more developed rear delts than you?
jeez,
I was trying to figure out how I could work that in today.
yeah, I don't really appreciate
appreciate
it, but
that.
thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
So you met Amanda.
Yeah, we met Amanda in Bolivia. She was living in Eugene, Oregon, which is about 5 hours south of Seattle. Nothing happened when we were in Bolivia because we were both just trying to survive. Bolivia, it was a tough trip. We get back, we keep in touch. We decide to meet up at Smith Rocks in Oregon to go rock climbing. I almost get us both killed. Very close. I almost died. That's one of those days where I was like this close to having a freak out panic attack on the side, like 200 feet up, out of gear, rope drag like out your ass. And I'm like, I'm gonna die. Like I can't go down. I don't want to go up anymore. And that's one of those moments where I like, you've been here before. Just breathe. I'll get
So
to work.
you went back to that match.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
But so I got us off the rock, rappelled down, like save Amanda. It was a pretty cool moment. That night we kissed for the first time.
Tell me you were upside down like Spider-Man.
We've done that, but not on that moment. No, damn
So
it.
corny.
Missed that.
So was she an adventurer? Adventurer?
Yeah, she wasn't
like you?
an experienced rock climber. She rock climbed a couple of times, but this was like her first time multi-pitch, like big wall climbing. And I got to sit over our heads, over my head and over her head.
So did you climb when you were in Pittsburgh?
When I still remember the sparring match boxing where I got hit in the head and I was like, this isn't as fun as it used to be.
This hurts.
Yeah. Time to find something new. And that's when I found rock climbing.
Okay.
And that's when I was like late 20s. I got into rock climbing. Yeah. So I started climbing around here. My friends Ken and Tatiana kind of took me under their wing, taught me the ropes. That's funny. Of climbing. Well done. And that became like my new passion, physical outlet. And
Yeah.
So yeah. So
Okay. So you make it to Seattle, Stolen Gutters, meet Amanda. You obviously have things in common. You're both
Yes.
active. You like the outdoors. Tell me how your relationship kind of evolves.
So every weekend, either she drove up to Seattle or I drove down to Oregon for months. We just hit it off. Every weekend was somewhere new
A
adventure.
new adventure.
Backpacking, rock climbing, whitewater rafting, like just going to museums. Like we had so much in common. If you could describe the perfect woman for me, it would be her. Like everything was, like it just doesn't get better in my fantasies than Amanda. And then that Christmas we flew down. I met her parents, awesome people, super intelligent, of course. They got an intelligent daughter. But on that trip, I felt insecure. Like I wasn't good enough for their daughter. Like all these old things reared themselves back up.
Yep.
So I was just a gutter installer. Even though I was happier than I've ever been, just making enough money, life was perfect. I'm like, this isn't enough. Like you can't keep a woman like this if you're just a gutter installer. So that kind of set off the next bad chapter. Amanda moved up to Seattle with me. We bought a
place,
place, and Seattle's market is just ridiculous. The cost of living there.
It's yeah.
People at grocery stores make $20 an hour in Seattle because the cost of living is just ridiculous. So the company I was working for, they flew out and they're like, hey, we want you to be general manager. Like, you've been with this company, you know this stuff, you know how we like the culture of the company. We're going to groom you. 3 years, you're going to be making 6 figures. You're going to be doing, all these carrots. And I'm like, well, this is it. I high school educated, no college degree. I'm like, I'm going to prove to everybody that Dan Borowski isn't just another pretty face. He can be a businessman too. He's just not a worker. He's just not a laborer. So this was my shot, right?
Yep.
I'm going to impress Amanda's parents, who weren't even judging me, but in my mind, they're judging me.
You had insecurities because of
Yes.
previous experiences.
I'm going to give Amanda this great life. She's going to have all these things that neither of us wanted. Like, she's just as free spirit, life is about travel, as I ever
Materialistic
was.
stuff doesn't matter to
But
her.
I'm projecting
yeah.
all this stuff. So I start bringing me into this position. I'm working 6-7 days a week. Like, the weekend trips are gone. I'm miserable. I'm working 12 hours. I'm on salary. So I'm busting my ass, not making, if I was on hourly, I'd have been making a killing. I poison our relationship. I push Amanda to get back into teaching and stuff. She's working REI at the time, and I became that person again. So even when we'd go on vacation, I'd be miserable because I knew I'd come back to this fire that needs put out.
Yeah.
I had all these new crews of guys.
You could never disconnect.
Never. Yeah. So we did the Wonderland Trail one year, which is a 90-mile backpacking trip around Mount Rainier. The most beautiful backpacking trip I've done anywhere I've ever been. That's number one. It took me like 3 days before I finally was able to be present in the moment. And Amanda's had it up to here with me because I'm like, no cell phone reception. I wonder what the guys are doing. She's like, look at this. And you're worried about work.
So when did she know that you were trying to impress or be someone that you weren't?
No. Again, it comes back to that stoic Danny.
So you were this free-spirited adventurist when you first met. Then all of a sudden you just changed who you were.
Yeah.
And she didn't know the cause of that.
No. And eventually it drove us apart where we broke up for 2 months. And that was the catalyst that changed things. Losing her was what the hell? What is this? I don't want to do this job. I hate this. At that point, we'd taken over the Portland territory too. And they didn't want to hire a manager down there. So I was driving back and forth every week from Portland to Seattle. When I'm in Portland, shit's going crazy up here. When I'm up here, shit's going crazy down there. So I'm miserable. And that's when I'm okay, I need to change. So I started going out. I started getting back into my hobbies. I started screw this corporate world. This isn't me. What the heck am I doing? I just lost the best woman ever that I could possibly hope to find. Excuse me. And so we ended up getting back together because she's like, oh, you're back. You're you again. Okay, this is the guy. And then sure enough, in a couple months, again, I could not break these cycles. And again, it's because of this job. And I told her, just give me one more year. I'm going to get on top of this and give me one more and give me this and give me that. And then, which leads us to the psychedelic chapter of my life.
Okay. Before you cannonball into this part of your life, before I have a guest on, I try to do a little bit of homework. I know different amounts of things about each guest that comes on. Mm-hmm. Some I'm very close to, some are more acquaintances. Obviously, we hadn't seen each other in 25 years. So I relied on Facebook for all information, Dan. Mm-hmm. Okay. And you, no pun intended, started a new chapter. Okay. And you were looking for happiness. And you found that through psychedelics, and you actually wrote a book about it called SHROOMED, and I will link this in the video description here.
Oh,
but
thanks.
So tell me, for someone like me, I wouldn't ever think to turn in that direction. Mm-hmm. Okay, everyone has their ways of coping with different things, whether it be prescription medication, therapy, religion, mm-hmm. alcoholism, you name it. Okay, there's coping mechanisms to get people through whatever they're dealing with. This would probably be one of the last things I would think to try because it has a bad stigma.
Yeah.
Right. Back in the 70s, shrooms, whatever. How in the world did you even discover this as a possible, I don't want to say cure, but a possible outlet for what you were dealing with?
So losing Amanda finally, Sean, showed me the common denominator in all my life's problems. It was me. That is the moment where it just all clicked. Like the common denominator in these jobs, these women, these in-laws, all these problems was that me, I was the common denominator. So I'm like, maybe I'm the problem. So I started devouring self-help books and went to some therapy, started listening to podcasts, and all these high achievers, I started hearing a lot of them talk about these psychedelic trips, like ayahuasca trips in South America, how much microdosing is helping them. Like Steve Jobs said, it was one of the 2 or 3 greatest things he ever did in his life. He said it wouldn't be Apple if it wasn't for his LSD journeys. So I started to get curious because by this point, what am I, 39, maybe 40, 39, 38? I had never smoked weed.
I was just going to ask,
I
had
had
you
never
ever
been
experimented?
drunk.
Okay.
I had never smoked a cigarette. I've never did a line of coke, like nothing.
And you were going all in.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
like, hey, if you're going to go big,
Go big or go home.
big, right?
Microdosing, let's megadose.
Let's do it.
So, I found a place where I was able to do that safely in a therapeutic setting with doing the work, not just taking the drug. It's very structured. You wear a blackout mask. They have musical playlists that have been scientifically made by the Johns Hopkins Institute to help carry you through these trips. You set your intentions of what you want to find.
Were you scared?
I was terrified. My first trip was terrible, which I write about in my book, was just, total fear of the unknown.
You just didn't allow yourself.
I did not. They ended up megadosing me to get me to blast off because I would not. My ego, I have such an ego, which has got me in all these problems. And there it was again. Like,
This isn't,
you're
as
not
far
a
as like,
druggie.
this isn't going to help you, or this isn't going to fix me. Like, what kind of ego, what part of your ego got in the way there?
I think it was letting go of control. When you're on a trip, you need to let go, go where it takes you, and just giving up that control. Like I said, I've never been drunk. Like I have such a phobia of losing control that letting something do that to me, like I was fighting it so hard in my trip. I did not want to let go. And then, the lady was like, drink this. And I thought it was going to like get me out of the trip, but it was like another 2 grams of psilocybin. There we go. There he goes.
To the moon.
Blasted off. But so I've done 5 trips. I hope that I'm able to do 1 a year for the rest of my life. I think that it's super healthy for your brain. I think it's a great reset. I've picked up just some absolutely amazing lessons. I've gone back and visited my mom, like dealt with all that stuff, let all of it go. That was huge. So like let's say 2 or 3 lessons here. One is the moment, which, every fortune cookie says, the moment's all that matters. Live in the moment, be present. Futures that hasn't happened, the past is gone. But like Bruce Lee used to say, I'm going to butcher this, but he said like, to see is to be deceived, to be told is to be like misled, but to feel like that's where, you understand when you feel something. Mm-hmm. And when you're on these psilocybin journeys or psychedelics, like a lot of people say the same thing, that you're in the moment. Like you can live a lifetime in a moment. I had this trip where I lived like 7 other lives, like versions of myself that had taken different paths. And this all happened like in, 5 minutes, but I'm in there for like what I think is years. Okay, here's how I can explain this. You're a father.
Yes.
Your first child, your son,
Carter.
Carter's born. What happens when you see Carter for the first time?
I bawled my eyes out.
Was that a moment that that you were there, you were present, you weren't thinking about lifting or anything?
Yeah, I'm like getting emotional thinking about it. It was the most amazing thing that had ever happened to me up to that point. Yeah.
That when my nephew was born, same thing. Like seeing, I'm gonna get emotional. Not thinking about it. Yeah. That that creation, like holding him for the first time. First time in my adult life, I cried tears of joy. Let myself experience a moment like that. Sean, I've been all over the world. I've seen things so beautiful that I can't even describe them, like without being there to see them. Sunsets and mountains and beaches and museums and paintings. Never let myself be in the moment like that. After psilocybin, I'm driving to Utah for work. It's a 12-hour drive from Seattle. I'm going to do it in 10 hours because Dan Borowski, that's what he does. Peeing in bottles and shit. We're going to make this happen. Listen to some really good music. I think I'm in Oregon or Idaho. I'm coming up over this ridge, this long pass. I get to the top, sun setting in the west behind me. Music hits its crescendo as this song. This view that I see in this moment, and I'm like, oh my God. I see this sign for overlook parking. I'm like, only if I had time. I'm like, what the fuck? Only if you had time. I'm like, pull this van over. Pull over, no one else in the lot, crank the music, climb up on top of my van, sit there and bawl my eyes out about this moment. We're on this like earth hurling through space. It's 67,000 miles per hour.
Yeah.
And this moment came together, the music, the view. I can feel the sun against me, the wind on my skin. And I just sat there and cried. I never would have let myself experience something like that. And I do that routinely now. Like sometimes I'll look at Amanda. I love how excited she gets about new things. She's amazing. But I'll see her joy. Like we were at the World of Wheels car show yesterday. Amanda, not a car person, is like blown away by the beauty of some of these cars. They're like art. And she's all excited and taking pictures. I'm just like over here like tearing up. It's look at this beautiful creature who has chosen to spend even a little bit, like, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but right now we're sharing this life together. And I just like these moments, like me and you sitting here, brother, we haven't seen each other for 25 years. I know. Here we are. It's amazing. This whole life is just, and I just have such an appreciation for this stuff now that I never let myself have. That was a rant.
No, man, that was a really good rant. I think that just really kind of wraps up and puts a bow on kind of what society as a whole deals with is we don't appreciate what's going on around us anymore because we're right here.
Mass distraction.
All day long. We're right here.
Yep.
This is our life. You know, it's always sitting near us and we're not looking through the bigger lens anymore. Mm-hmm. And which is a shame. And I think, you know, obviously the trips you went on helped that and kind of disconnected your mind from kind of what you thought you had to be. You found maybe a person inside you that you didn't know existed. And I know I'm doing a bad job of kind of like tying this all together, but it's just the appreciation you have now that you didn't have before. We all need that. Mm-hmm. You know, we have loved ones sitting right next to us that we're completely ignoring because of whatever distractions we have, whether it's work or, you know, TV or whatever. It's like, just be present. In that trip you made, sitting on top of your van, watching that sunset. Yeah, Dan, well, we got to get here and let's beat the GPS time.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, fuck that. Like, there's more to life than that. Yep. And we just all need to appreciate what's going on around us a little bit more and just look around sometimes. Because we have no idea sometimes what's sitting next to us or what's passing by, or like you said, the joy in your wife's face. Like you saying that's deep. The fact that you love her that much, that her joy brings you joy. Yeah. You know, other people be like, Why is she so excited about that?
Yeah.
Why is but no, like, so I want to get back to this. This is all foreign to me. Okay. The psilocybin.
Yes.
You've said that word a few times, kind of like under your breath. Psilocybin is, that's the chemical.
Yes. That makes the magic mushrooms magic.
Okay. Is this illegal?
Yes.
Okay.
Disgustingly.
Okay.
And I talk about that in the book, why I believe that it's still illegal whenever it's shown to have tremendously high success rates treating people with addictions, anxiety, depression, PTSD. Oregon recently legalized it for therapeutic use.
Okay.
And all the clinics they have there that are starting this are booked up for like years. So it's kind of like, marijuana. It's on its way.
Sure.
It's going to be probably, decades if it all it becomes. I mean, my God, marijuana is still a Schedule I narcotic.
Right.
And we're drinking this stuff. It's probably far worse than.
Yeah. And you said, one of the questions that I was thinking of asking you when, I kind of did my exploration around your life in the book. So you don't rely on trips on a frequent basis.
No, not at all.
This is more of call it a reawakening periodically.
Yeah.
To kind of like level set you again.
Yeah.
Right? Just ground you again. Right?
100%.
Okay. So you're not using this. You don't need this. This
No,
isn't.
No, it was a year.
I need my fix.
No, not at all. It's non-addictive at all.
Okay.
Yeah, and as much as I want it legalized, I want it to be in a setting, like this is not, I don't know. People ruin everything good when it goes to the masses, like uncontrolled. I think that like every young, like, I don't know, once your brain's developed 25 years old, that everybody would benefit from this because of another great lesson from psilocybin that everyone who trips talks about is that connectiveness with each other, with the world around us, that this world needs right now, man. I realized that when I'm mean to you, say I'm mean to you, it's not just hurting you, it's hurting me because we're one. Like we're on this same journey. We are all the universe trying to consciously observe itself. It won't make any sense, but like when there's wars going on, like it's not this side versus this side. It's us like hurting each other, and there's no point to it. And it really helps you to see like, and just the human constructs that we live in, like society, the economy, religion, war, everything is because we as a species have willed this to be like this. We could change everything tomorrow if we chose to, but you can't get 7 billion people on the page. And it was just, just understanding the impact that we each have on each other and ourselves. I saw this meme that I thought was so great. I love this so much. There's these two people, and the one they're standing like kind of by a garden, and the one person's like, I'm really worried about 2024, with like the political division. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, what do you think's going to happen in 2024? And the other person's like, I think it's going to bring flowers. And the first guy's like, flowers? Why would you say that? And the other person says, because I'm planting flowers.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so a lot of the people that are watching this or listening to this, as soon as you talk about tripping and shrooms, there's definitely a stereotype with that.
Yeah.
But anything in moderation can be used for good.
Yeah.
Okay. It doesn't have to be addictive. It doesn't have to be abused. There's a purpose for it.
Yes.
You found the purpose for psilocybin.
It was a tool.
It was a tool. That's a great way to put it. And Is it going to be a good tool for everyone? No.
No.
But for you, you found it. Thank goodness you found it.
Yeah.
So let's move our microphones out of the way a little bit because we're going to arm wrestle. And I'm going to ask you a question.
All right. I think I need a phone book.
We used to arm wrestle a lot in high school.
In cafeteria.
This is like bringing back some memories. Here, because I want to be able to hear your answer here.
Okay.
All right.
You start. You need a phone book.
You start whenever you want.
Okay.
Go ahead. So, if psilocybin never came into Dan's life, where would Dan be today?
Probably single. Where are you going?
Single?
Yeah. Still probably repeating those same destructive behaviors.
Yeah. All right. Cheers.
Strong as ever, brother.
So
Yeah.
now that you can think.
Blood's returning to my brain.
All right. So you think you would be single?
Yeah,
because
I would not have broke free from that cycle that I kept finding myself in. Psilocybin let me see. So the one trip that I got to do was when me and Amanda were fighting real bad. And my trip sitter, I called her up. I'm like, my wife's in Canada for the weekend. Like, usually we did a couple weeks work leading up to a trip. I'm like, can I trip tomorrow? Like, I don't have anything to do. I really feel, and it'd been like 6 months. And I'm like, I need to do some work. And so she had me do this, like, and I talk about this in the book where we met like at 6 a.m. She was a runner. We ran for miles and miles in the woods until I was going to puke because trying to keep up with her, Mr. Ego. And this girl's like a marathon runner and I'm not. So anyway, I get to do this trip. After doing all this work all day, get to do this trip. I see the damage that I was doing to Amanda, like how I was reverting back, how I was running past her, like she just wanted my attention and I'm like not giving it to her. And I go deeper and deeper and deeper to all these years of me doing this to people and me living not present in these moments. And I go back to when my brother was about 5, I was maybe 7, and we're in the Cub Scouts. And we're going to go do a pumpkin carving contest with the Cub Scouts. So I come into the kitchen and I'm like, I didn't even know I was carrying this memory. And so I'm back like living this as 7-year-old Danny. That's probably 9. He's probably 6. Anyway, I go in the kitchen. My brother has all this aluminum foil out and he made this hat for his pumpkin. And so I come out and my little brother's there. He's like, look, I made this hat for my pumpkin. He's all proud of this. I'm like, oh, that's cool. My dad comes in at that moment, who, when we were kids, my dad worked full-time as a diesel mechanic, Navy Reserves, 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year, and fixed people's cars all evening. Like the guy did what he had to do to provide for his family.
Yeah.
So he comes in. My mom had taken my sister somewhere, and my dad had to take us to this Cub Scouts. And my little brother, shows my dad this pumpkin with this hat. Look, Dad, I made this. All proud of it. My dad sees the mess, doesn't understand, this moment. Yells at my brother, like, "What's the matter with you wasting aluminum foil? You guys get your shoes on. We got to go." Here's this guy that's all stressed out, like no time to spend with his sons, like snaps, and my brother's crushed. Like, so I see this little boy who just wanted his dad, just at this one moment, just look at me, like notice what I did, be proud of me. And, like I said, obviously, so during the trip, I get stuck in this loop where I start reliving this through my brother's eyes, through my dad's eyes, and I like experience everything. Like I feel my dad's frustration with like just being overwhelmed and have to do all this work. And I feel my brother like crushed as his dad doesn't give him the acknowledgement. And so I came away from that moment realizing that when it comes to interacting with people, like we're one of two positions. Either we're this child that just wants the world just to stop, just like notice us for 1 minute. Look what I did. Look what I can do. Or we're the parent figure that can just stop and listen and just acknowledge someone. And I was, all those moments with Amanda and with so many people in my life, they just wanted, just hey, like, stop, look at me, notice me. And I'm like, yeah, I got work to do.
Yeah, I'm busy. Yeah, not
Got to
now.
build this business. Got to this. So busy. So many moments missed. But that was a real powerful. And I was probably only in that loop for like, a minute, but it felt like an eternity. Like I just kept getting drugged through this over and over and over. So I will never forget that.
Do you ever feel when you're on these trips, do you ever feel scared? Or do you ever find yourself reliving something that you're afraid you're not going to be able to get out of?
My last trip I did, yeah. It was the closest I came to a bad trip, but it was still I've never got the answers I wanted, but I always get the answers I need. It seems like for me with psychedelics, in the very last trip I did, I got stuck in this loop that involved my dad and letting him down. And I kept reliving this moment like over and over where my dad had wanted to spend time with me and I was too busy. And I could not remember when he stopped over what I was so busy about that day that I had to leave when my dad just wanted to see his son.
Yeah.
And I got stuck in this loop trying to figure out what was so important that I could not stop and spend time with my dad, who's, it's like the Cats in the Cradle song.
Yeah.
Like my dad did all this stuff for me. He's my hero.
And you couldn't give him
And now
5
I was
minutes of
the
your
guy
time.
that was
Yeah.
so busy. And that lasted for a while. That was a rough trip. But
Yeah. I mean, in hindsight though, Dan, I think we're all guilty of not giving loved ones the time that they deserve.
in this world.
Full confession, my parents live 2 miles down the road. I might see them once a week, which saying that out loud makes me feel like a bad son. And I'm going to start getting emotional now. There's no excuse for it. It's like, yeah, I'm busy. We're all busy. It's prioritizing the people that deserve it, right? And, I could sit here and say, I'm going to do a better job. I'm going to go visit them more. I could say it all day long. I should do it.
Yeah.
And, you being stuck in that trip, trying to figure out like the source of, I don't think the problem was why couldn't I give him the time? It's just that you didn't.
Yeah.
And you can't change it. And you had to relive the hurt that he probably felt.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
And, and that's just, I'm going to keep going back to it. We all just need to do better. And
Who have you lost in your life that was closest to like a grandparent, or who's died in your life that hit you the hardest?
my uncle, Bob.
What would you give for 1 minute to sit down with Bob?
Yeah.
Would you give all this?
Oh my God.
Your Jaguar?
Everything.
For 1 minute, you
Everything.
would give, like that car, it's an awesome car, by the way, for 1 minute.
Yeah.
But right now, we have our parents, or I have my dad.
And
One day, we're going to be
for
saying,
granted.
yeah,
I know.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah. But
And
I
you
think-
have to have balance. You can't.
yeah. And
I'm sure your parents don't want you there every day.
they probably do. It's like, yeah, we need balance, but it's almost like we have to define what the balance is. The balance to us might be a completely different meaning to the reciprocator of your balance,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
Like we might think it's fair, but on the other end, they're like, this isn't balance. Like, what are you talking about? But no, I'm giving you 10%. Like that's the most I can do right now. And they're like, 10%, what am I? Right?
Yeah.
So I think balance is relative,
100%.
right? What's the point of all this? We need to do better. And if I were to lose my parents tomorrow, no matter I think how much I visited them, whether it was every day, I'd still feel like it wasn't enough. Right. And I think that's just a normal reaction to loss is you could have done more. You should have done more. It's never enough. I don't want that to be an excuse of like, oh, that means.
But do they know how you feel? Do you, like me and my dad still to this day, I'm on these psychedelic trips where I'm telling my dad these things that in real life, all right, I'm going to tell my dad. I'm going to make this a point.
Yeah.
What he means to me. I can't remember the last time
if you're asking me, I've definitely become closer to my parents in my older age than I was as a child. I think you start to appreciate the love for your parents more.
Yeah.
The older you get,
Yeah,
just as you mature.
Yeah.
And, being a parent myself, you start to realize some of the things that they went through, things that they felt. Now you're in their shoes. Mm-hmm. So I think you start looking at things from a different angle. But I could do better, man. And I should do better.
I think a lot of it, like you said, how balance is relative to each of us. Acknowledging, like I've had these death trips where I've died 100 times. Pretty trippy. Understanding that this time here ends. I, Dan Borowski, am going to die. There's a finite amount of moments where I am this person on this world in this time. And just being cognizant of that has really helped me to prioritize what I want out of this life. Like what I want my journey to be, what I want, I think Hunter Thompson says that life shouldn't be where you kind of roll up to the finish line. You should come sliding in.
Through.
Yep. Covered with dirt, torn and tattered, being like, wow, what a ride. And just being cognizant of that has really helped me to prioritize what's important in my life. And what's important to me might not be important to you. And that's fine. We're on different journeys.
When I think of death, I picture a headstone, right? People are going to come visit.
Yeah.
Your burial plot.
Hopefully.
And I want to be remembered for what I did for people or for society. No one's going to remember me for my car or the bourbon or material shit. Mm-hmm. I want to be like, oh, Sean, he helped me through this, or I remember him inspiring me to do this, or he pulled over to the side of the road to help me change that's the shit that matters.
Yeah.
Right. And I think Dan now, present Dan, post-trip Dan, is more that person than you were before.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it's just these little, like we want to be like, Winston Churchill's and like these big figures that move the world. But yesterday, a friend stopped by. Good old Dave, man. He's this West Virginia hillbilly. I love this guy. We worked together for years and years. He used to smoke cigarettes all the time. We worked together. I used to always get on about smoking. And then one day, he was just telling a story to Amanda yesterday where he got so pissed at me. He's like, would you quit bugging me about smoking? Why would you do that? And I told him, because I love you, brother. And I walked away. And that little moment, that one line made him think about, if he cares about me, maybe I should start caring about
yourself.
Right?
And
yet that just has ripple effects because Dave has gone on to help so many people in his life, just with turning around with substance abuse and stuff. And it's just these little moments, man. Like, we're not going to change the world 100 years. No one's going to remember Dan Borowski, but those ripple effects are still out there.
If you help one person, you've changed one life.
Yeah.
You've succeeded.
Yep.
Right? Too many people are just so stuck in their own heads and stuck in their own lives and just worried about themselves. Me. What they have, what they don't have. Right? It's just it.
And we're bombarded with, and that's where psychedelics like pulls you out of that. Like the 24/7 bombardment. I can't imagine being a kid today with TikTok and Instagram and all these people doing these things, how that must make these kids feel, and fitness gurus and like all this stuff. It's so fake. And they're like just bombarded with this shit. Like people have been in fights in our school. I can't remember how it went or the outcome, but these kids, like, that is locked in the web forever.
So first thing that happens with a fight, phones
Yeah.
out.
And these kids have to relive this shit for forever.
Yep.
It's such a shame.
Yep.
But that's neither here nor there.
Before we close out, do you have any questions for me?
Yes, I do. I have lots of questions for you, brother. So, okay, real briefly. High school.
Yeah.
Skinny Sean, Skinny Dan. We're down at the gym pumping iron. Remember that guy Matt used to drum? Matt, you used to keep in touch with him?
Brozovic.
Yeah. Is he around? Good guy.
He's a huge bodybuilder now.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll have to look him up.
Yep.
But anyway, so there we are, like reading our Flex magazines and all that stuff. How did this happen? Was fitness always part of you? Did you ever get away from it? How did you end up back in this fitness world? Because you're doing a lot of good, brother. I mean, I've seen the testimonies. Teresa went to you, like her and Garrett were telling me about training with you. Yeah. Like, you're doing good.
Thank you.
With what you're doing with people. So how did this become your passion?
So we all have defining moments.
Yes.
Okay. At the time of that moment, it might not seem like it's going to end up being a positive. But, and you might not even know this, Dan, but I was bullied a decent amount in high school by one or two individuals. We don't have to say names. Yeah. And for someone that never felt like they fit in, getting bullied is just like kicking you while you're down, right? It's like I was trying to find my place, but it's just like, just when I think I might be finding it, it's just like, nope, not here. Yeah. You don't belong here. And that bullying is what made me start to work out. I'm thinking, if I'm less of a target, if I'm bigger, more muscular, better looking, whatever, I'm not going to get bullied anymore. Mm-hmm. No one's going to want to mess with me. That's what started this, is a bully.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try to get this person on.
Oh, that would be awesome.
And not just talk about that. Obviously, I want to know about him. But if it wasn't for that, Dan, I don't know where I'd be today. Yeah. As silly as that sounds, if I was never bullied, I don't know what my course would have been. And I'm still that person. I'm still the skinny Sean, 150 pounds, getting bullied. People see the exterior, right? I'm confident. I have whatever, XYZ. But in here, I'm still insecure. I'm still scared. I'm still kind of like waiting for that next punch that's going to take me down. And I think that's why I do so many different things. Is I'm trying to...
That's the fire that's still burning.
Yeah. And that's like my protection. But yeah, and very few people know this. And, my closest, like Maria obviously knows about it. And I don't even think my parents know much about like, what I went through in high school. And that wasn't like traumatizing. Like I wasn't going through therapy and medicated because like I don't have like PTSD and stuff over it, but it fucked with me.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I was there.
And yeah, you've probably witnessed some of the moments, but it doesn't go away, and I think deep down, I always feel like I'm going to be a target of something. And that just keeps me on my toes. I'm so aware of my surroundings.
Yeah.
It's like disturbing. I'm very observant. I'm always, even when I'm driving, I'm like, every car that's coming into an intersection, I'm like, I'm so on top of things. And I think that's just like me just protecting myself from getting damaged again. If I had to kind of like put a metaphor to it. But yeah, that's
where it came from.
that's it, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you need to be on the other side of this desk for an episode.
That's the
I'd
plan.
love to hear more of this story.
Yeah, and I would, when the time is right, I'm going to tell my story, and I'm not going to hold anything back.
Nice.
Because, we all have a past, which we can't change.
Yep.
But I am a true believer that our past can and should change you as far as lessons learned or things to not repeat, or the same things that you're dealing with, like with the things you're learning about your trips, learning about with your trips. You're learning about things that you didn't even have conscious memory of.
Yeah.
That's now coming to the surface, and you're now able to sort of cope with it in your own way and move past that. But yeah. Thanks for the question.
Good stuff, brother.
Dude, freaking 25 years.
I know. It feels like picked right back up.
Yeah.
I love that.
And and that's a sign of a true friendship,
Yeah.
right? Not
I talk about that in my book, how some people, man, you're just on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Well, thanks for coming by.
It was my pleasure.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
And again, the whole point of this is that your story touches somebody. Someone's going to listen to what you had to say, and they're going to improve, or their life is going to change in a positive manner, or they're going to relate to something that you said for the better.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, the influencers now. It is so hard to relate to some of these big influencers right now. And it's almost like they're toxic influencers. Like I don't want to be connected to that.
No, you've got a real good energy here I've watched the first 2 episodes, and I think you're going to do good.
People want to hear real stories from real people
Yeah.
that they're living next door to, or they're going to the same church as, or they're singing at the gym, or they're passing in Target. Like, that's what interests me, is what real people are dealing with.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know all of this stuff that you dealt with from age 18 till now. Yeah. And hearing it is going to help me. Kevin, my previous guest, the stuff he had to say.
I like that guy.
It helps me, Same with Eddie.
Yeah.
Man of God.
Yeah.
Amazing husband, father, like go-getter. Like
entrepreneur. I love
how
his
can
spirit.
you not be inspired by people like this?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, if anyone wants to connect with me about Crohn's disease or anything, just find me on Instagram, DannyB_754. So I love talking to people.
It'll be
about
tagged
IBS.
right about there on the video. No, not your boob.
Okay.
Yeah, right there. Yep.
Camera makes me look good.
All right, Danny.
All right.
Appreciate you, brother. Love you, man.
Love you.
All right. On to the next episode. Guess who's coming next?
Who's next?
Jennifer Miller.
Oh.
Yep.
Right.
She's got a great story.
Excellent.
So thanks for tuning in, guys. Peace.